Scary telling.
"Mommy, my friend is coming over," my daughter, Lily, happily cheered, her blonde pigtails bouncing as she ran towards me. I smiled, always happy to hear her imaginative play. "That's great, sweetheart. What's your friend's name?" "Laura. She's my invisible friend, but she's coming to visit today," Lily said, her eyes twinkling with excitement. I chuckled, playing along. "Well, that sounds like fun. What do you and Laura plan to do?" Lily's grin widened. "We're going to play dolls and tea party, and she wants to meet Mr. Snuggles," she said, referring to her favorite stuffed animal. I nodded, not wanting to spoil her fun. "Okay, why don't you go get your dolls and set them up for the tea party while I make some snacks for all of you?" Lily clapped her hands and ran off to her room while I headed to the kitchen. As I started slicing some fruit, I heard a noise from outside. It sounded like footsteps on the gravel path leading to our front door. My heart rate picked up, and I glanced at the clock on the stove. It was too early for Lily's friend to arrive, and I wasn't expecting any visitors. The motion detecting light outside flicked on, illuminating the front porch. I couldn't see anyone through the frosted glass of the front door, but I had a feeling that whoever was outside was watching us. I hesitated for a moment, debating whether or not to answer the door. But then I remembered Lily's excitement about her friend's visit and decided to check if it was her. I took a deep breath and approached the door. As I got closer, I could see a faint outline of a figure standing on the porch. "Hello?" I called out, my hand on the doorknob. "Is someone there?" There was no answer, but the figure moved slightly, and I could hear a rustling sound, like someone was shuffling their feet. My heart raced as I slowly opened the door, trying to see who it was. But as soon as I unlocked it, the figure vanished, and the motion light went off. I stood there, frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Had I imagined it? Was it a trick of the light? I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. Maybe it was just a prankster or a lost traveler who had wandered onto our property by mistake. But still, the sense of unease lingered. I decided to focus on Lily and her imaginary friend, hoping to distract myself from the strange encounter. I went back to the kitchen and finished making the snacks while keeping an eye on the front door. Lily appeared in the doorway, her arms full of dolls and stuffed animals. "Mommy, can you help me set up the tea party table?" I smiled at her, grateful for her innocence and enthusiasm. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's set it up in the living room." As we arranged the tea party, I tried to push the strange encounter out of my mind. But every time I heard a noise outside, my heart skipped a beat. Finally, the doorbell rang, and Lily squealed with delight. "That's Laura. She's here." I took a deep breath and opened the door, relieved to see Lily's best friend, who was invisible to me. "Hello, Laura," I said with a smile. And that's when things took a turn for the worse. Lily giggled as she welcomed Laura inside, and I couldn't help but feel a little creeped out, talking to someone who wasn't there. But I reminded myself that it was just Lily's imagination, and I didn't want to discourage her from her creative play. We sat down for the tea party, with Lily pouring imaginary tea and serving invisible cupcakes. Laura seemed to be enjoying herself, and Lily was chattering away, telling her all about her day at school and her latest adventures with her dolls. But as the afternoon wore on, I started to notice strange things happening around the house. Toys would move on their own, doors would open and close without anyone touching them, and there were whispers that I couldn't quite make out. At first, I thought it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But then I noticed that Lily was talking to Laura more and more, and she seemed to be responding to her like she was a real person. I tried to brush it off, but the sense of unease lingered. It felt like there was someone else in the room with us, watching us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was Laura. As the sun began to set, Lily asked if Laura could spend the night. I hesitated, but Lily's pleading eyes won me over. "Okay, but only for tonight," I said, trying to hide my unease. "But Laura will have to sleep on the couch." Lily nodded, and I helped her set up a bed for Laura, even though I couldn't see her. As Lily drifted off to sleep, I stayed up, keeping an eye on the living room. And that's when things got truly terrifying. It started with a cold breeze, like a gust of wind had blown through the room. I shivered and wrapped my arms around myself, trying to keep warm. But then I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the direction of the living room. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I had left the door to the living room open, and I could see a faint glow coming from the night light in the corner. I got up, my body tense with fear, and slowly made my way to the living room. As I got closer, I could see that Laura's bed was empty, and the blankets were crumpled on the floor. I looked around, trying to see if she had gotten up, but there was no sign of her. And then I heard a soft whisper coming from the darkness. "Mommy." It was Lily's voice, but it sounded different, like she was scared. I followed the sound, my heart in my throat, and found her huddled in a corner, her eyes wide with fear. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to soothe her. "Laura, she's gone," Lily said, her voice shaking. She went into the darkness. I tried to calm Lily down, telling her it was just her imagination, but the sense of dread lingered. I knew that something was wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Laura was still in the house, watching us. I stayed up all night, listening to the whispers and the creaks of the old house. And as the sun began to rise, I decided to search for Laura, hoping to put an end to this nightmare once and for all. I searched every inch of the house, calling out Laura's name, but there was no sign of her. It was like she had vanished into thin air. As I walked back into the living room, defeated and exhausted, I noticed something strange on the couch. There was a small patch of dirt and grass, like someone had been sitting there. I knelt down and examined it more closely, and that's when I noticed something else. There were footprints leading from the couch to the back door, like someone had walked out into the yard. I followed the footprints, my heart pounding in my chest, and they led me to a small patch of woods behind the house. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should turn back, but the thought of leaving Laura out there alone was too much to bear. I pushed through the underbrush, following the faint trail of footprints until I came to a clearing in the woods. And that's when I saw her. Laura was standing in the middle of the clearing, her back to me. She was wearing a white dress, and her hair was long and dark. But there was something off about her, something that made my skin crawl. I stepped closer, calling out her name, but she didn't respond. And then she turned around, and I saw her face for the first time. Her eyes were completely black, like two empty voids staring back at me. Her skin was pale and gaunt, and her mouth was twisted into a grotesque smile. I tried to run, to get away from her, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. I was rooted to the spot, unable to move, as she started to walk towards me, her arms outstretched. And then, just as she was about to grab me, everything went black. I woke up in a hospital room with a throbbing headache and a sense of unease. The doctors told me that I had been found unconscious in the woods and that I had been missing for 3 days. I tried to explain what had happened about Laura and the strange footprints, but no one believed me. They thought it was a hallucination, a figment of my imagination brought on by stress and exhaustion. But I knew what I had seen, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Laura was still out there, waiting for me. Over the next few weeks, strange things started to happen around the house. Objects would move on their own, and I would hear whispers and footsteps in the darkness. One night, I woke up to find Laura standing at the foot of my bed. Her eyes were still black, but this time, she spoke to me. "Mommy, why did you leave me out there?" she asked, her voice low and menacing. I tried to reason with her, to explain that I had been looking for her, but she didn't want to hear it. She told me that she was never coming back, that she was going to stay in the darkness forever. And then she vanished, leaving me alone in the dark. I knew that I had to do something, to find a way to bring Laura back before it was too late. So, I did some research, trying to find anything that might help. That's when I came across a strange ritual, one that promised to bring back the dead. It was dangerous, and I knew that there was a chance that it wouldn't work, but I had to try. I gathered the materials I needed and waited until midnight, when the veil between the living and the dead was at its thinnest. And then, I began the ritual. I lit candles and placed them around the room, creating a circle of light. I drew strange symbols on the ground with chalk and recited ancient incantations that I had found in a dusty old book. As I spoke the words, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was like something was watching me, waiting to see if I would succeed. And then, I heard a sound. It was faint at first, but it grew louder and more insistent. It was a voice, calling out to me from the darkness. "Mommy, help me," the voice whispered. I knew it was Laura. She was reaching out to me, trying to come back to the world of the living. I focused all of my energy on the ritual, pouring my heart and soul into every word. And then, something miraculous happened. The air around me grew cold, and a gust of wind swept through the room. And then, there was a bright light, so blinding that I had to shield my eyes. When I opened them again, I saw Laura standing in front of me, alive and well. Her eyes were no longer black, but a bright, vibrant blue, and her smile was warm and welcoming. She hugged me tightly, and I knew that we were finally reunited. But as we held each other, I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to her in the darkness. Had she been taken by something sinister, something that wanted to keep her there forever? Or was it all in my mind, a manifestation of my deepest fears and anxieties? I may never know the truth, but one thing is certain, I will never forget the terror that I felt that night, when the motion detecting light went on and I realized that something was out there, watching and waiting for me. In the days and weeks that followed, Laura and I began to rebuild our lives. We moved to a new house, far away from the woods where she had disappeared, and I tried to put the past behind me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, something that had tried to keep Laura from me. And as the months went by, strange things began to happen again. I would see shadows moving in the corner of my eye, and hear whispers in the dark. Objects would move on their own, and sometimes I would find strange symbols etched into the walls. I knew that I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to find out what was happening and put an end to it once and for all. So, I hired a paranormal investigator, a man named John who had helped other families in similar situations. He was skeptical at first, but as we walked through the house, he began to sense something was off. "This place has a lot of dark energy," he said. "There's something here that doesn't want to leave." He performed a series of tests, using EMF readers and other equipment to measure the paranormal activity. And as we watched, he uncovered something that left me stunned. "The symbols on the wall," he said, "they're ancient runes used in rituals to summon powerful spirits." I felt a chill run down my spine. Had I inadvertently invited something into my home while I performed the ritual to bring Laura back? John continued his investigation, and eventually he found something that he believed was causing the activity. In the attic, hidden away in a box, was an old Ouija board. "I've seen this before," he said. "These boards are notorious for attracting negative energy. It's possible that something has attached itself to you or your daughter." I couldn't believe it. All this time, I had been living with a malevolent presence in my home, something that had been feeding off my fear and anxiety. But I wasn't going to let it win. With John's help, I performed a cleansing ritual, banishing the negative energy and protecting my home from further harm. And now, things are finally back to normal. Laura is happy and healthy, and the house is peaceful once again. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the dark, I can't help but wonder what might have happened if I hadn't brought Laura back from the darkness. What kind of horrors might still be waiting for me out there, in the woods where she disappeared?